I'm Jose de Castro. I'm with Cisco. I'll start by just telling you a little bit about myself. This is, when I saw it was going to be like the last talk, I kind of changed things up a little bit. And so this is not going to be a deeply technical talk. I come from the collaboration domain, world of voice and video and messaging. And while we do apply machine learning and AI in various aspects of our platform, we are now just entering a really interesting time in collaboration, specifically as natural language processing and the rise of virtual assistants are actually becoming viable options in the enterprise, right? And so they've really started to penetrate consumer markets, with the advent of Siri and Cortana and all these areas. And so we are spending a lot of time thinking about that. But this talk is split up in a couple sides. First, I just want to give you some of my personal insights, having done a startup, exited to Cisco, and then just kind of seen this explosion of technology and advancements in technology over the last 2 or 3 years. And then we'll dive into chatbots, what they are, how our customers are applying them, and then MindMeld was mentioned a second ago, and give you a little bit of insight into why we acquired MindMeld and what we plan on doing with that. And I think we all go drink beer upstairs, so that's good. Cool. So in 2009, I founded a company with a couple co-founders called Tropo. We effectively wanted to democratize voice, video, and messaging for a new class of web developer. If that sounds familiar to you, it's because another company had the exact same idea about 2 months apart from us called Twilio. They're a Bay Area company, and we were pretty much competing head-to-head for a long part of the duration. They took a slightly different route to market. We were partnering with service providers like AT&T and Verizon, and those types of guys. They went full bore, to position themselves as kind of like the new Bay Area telco and very kind of anti-establishment. Worked out pretty well for them. They had a great IPO. We ended up landing inside Cisco, and I'm really glad that we did, because our mission really pretty much at Tropo was really less about being the best platform, even though obviously we strive to be, but really what we wanted to do was create the best possible user experience. We wanted to put collaboration and great communication tools in the hands of as many users as possible, because we felt that we were entering an era where people are going to be working in different and new ways, right? And he was just talking about the previous speaker about allowing his employees to work fully remote now. And so this is he attributed it to the culture of his company, but even very large companies are starting to notice that in order to retain talent, we have to change the way that we work. And I think that's a pretty profound thing. Now, in the middle of all of that, in the middle of starting a company, selling my company, joining Cisco and taking on this new role, I also managed to be a dad for the first time. And so that's my 2.5-year-old son. I think that picture was taken about 6 months ago. But I'll tell you a little story, and I promise this is going to actually make sense in a bit. But about a year ago, I woke up and my son was sick, and my wife was too. And so, I just started at Cisco, and we had a big project due. And so I was really sweating it. I was like, man, I got to make it into the office. I got all these preparations to make. And then something hit me. Like, I'm sitting there in the shower. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to deal with this situation. And I was like, all right, I can do this, right? What do I need? What do I actually need to get done here? I need to get some medicine for the kid. We got to feed ourselves. I'm not feeding my kid sushi, by the way. That was for me. But I got him some chicken soup or something, and then some sushi for myself. And then obviously I need to take all my in-person calls meetings that I had scheduled, and I need to get them over video somehow, right? And so luckily I work at Cisco, and that part was pretty easy. And something hit me while I was sitting there fretting in the shower. I was like, wait a second. Within 6 minutes, I had pulled out my phone, and I had just pretty much fixed the day. And it occurred to me that this just wasn't possible just a few years ago, right? It's like I pulled up Prime Now, I ordered the medicine, I ordered some food, I went into my calendar app, and I re-invited all my meetings to be on Cisco Spark. And that was the joke that he stole from me. But our product is actually called Cisco Spark, and it has nothing to do with Apache Spark. It's just but anyway, so that got me thinking. It got me thinking a lot about the kind of trajectory that some of these technologies are on. And I started getting really curious, and I started doing some research on my own. Before I get into that, though, just think about how amazing this is. I mean, just 10 years ago, there was no iPhone. There's no, you didn't have apps in your pocket. But we also saw the rise of something pretty profound, right? Amazon Web Services started around the same time, really democratizing, mass scale compute, allowing startups to start small and grow into their infrastructure needs. And then in 2013, another really profound thing happened. So that's about 6 years later. We saw the beginning of this hardware hacker movement. All of a sudden, hardware became sexy again. And so you had the introduction of Arduino, Raspberry Pi, containerization started making its way into the kind of everyday conversations. And this sharing movement really underscored by Uber, probably the biggest success, but there were many companies also that were leveraging the cloud to find like-minded people, and through technology, creating tremendous amounts of value by sharing resources. So that's pretty incredible. But if you see a trend here, well, it's three plots to not make a trend really. But if you were to trend this out, one interesting thing is happening that there's an acceleration happening here. It took 6 years to get from there to there. It took 3 years to get from there to there. And come 2016, wow. Just in the last 18 months, we've seen an explosion in cognitive services, AR, VR, and I keep waiting for the next shoe to drop. I keep waiting for are we in a weird bubble? It feels bubbly, but it's not. But no, you talk to our customers, and this is one thing that I have access to at Cisco that I wouldn't have as a startup. I have access to real enterprises. I can just, I'm an executive at Cisco. I can just pick up the phone, and I talk to, other executives at big companies. They wouldn't take my calls when I was Tropo, but now that I'm at Cisco, they do. And I talk to these people, and I realize that no, they're using this shit and actually deriving value from it. This is not just hype. And so that got me really curious about, where is this going? And then, shortly after that, this is about a year ago that I started doing this research. About 8 months ago, I stumbled on a really great blog post by a guy called Klaus Schwab. Are you guys familiar with Klaus Schwab at all? He's the chairman and founder of the World Economic Forum. A well-known economist, published economist, brilliant guy, but he's also a futurist. And he published a book. It started as a blog post, and then he wrote a whole book by this same name. And so what he postulates, his theory is that we are at the very beginning, at the very cusp of transformation in technology that's punctuated by a fourth and distinct a revolution that is separate and apart from the three prior. And so you may have heard, obviously, of the other three revolutions here, right? And so the first one, about 1700s, first industrial revolution, we saw the introduction of steam power, which made mechanical production and mass production started to become viable. About 100 years after that, we saw electricity, and then true mass production was possible after that. About 100 years after that, we saw the introduction of semiconductors, electronics, and what is commonly referred to as the digital revolution, right? But if you're counting 1, 2, 3, it's really the third industrial revolution. And many think, or at least many thought before the introduction of this set of papers from Klaus Schwab, that we were still in the third industrial revolution. But there is mounting evidence, and if you read the book, you'll see that we are at the very beginning of a truly distinct revolution that brings together the digital and the physical and the biological into one. And he refers to them as cyber-physical systems. I'm not a huge fan of that term, but anyway, some of the drivers for fourth industrial revolution, pretty obvious. I think we've touched on them a lot today. But mostly, we've seen exponential advancements in areas like machine learning, robotics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think the key word here is exponential. One of the most radical ideas in Klaus Schwab's book is that in 5 years' time, we will quite literally see advancements in technology at an exponential scale. That has never been the case before in the entire course of human history. So it's quite possible that in 5 years, because of these advancements, you'll go to bed at a reasonable hour, hopefully, wake up 6 to 8 hours later, and have missed, a dozen massive advancements in medicine, 100 massive advancements in manufacturing, semiconductor production, mathematics, fundamental shifts in the world of mathematics and astrobiology. And so in a world where technology is advancing at a truly exponential rate, and again, this is not hyperbole, right? I mean, truly exponential, it really gets you thinking about what the role of technology will be in our lives, and quite frankly, what the role of humans will be. Not to be an alarmist or anything like that. I'm pretty bullish on this stuff. I don't think the bots are going to take over anytime soon. But it does beg the question. Where's the value? All the value being created by these systems, where does that value can't come from nowhere, right? The value, if these systems are creating value, then that value needs to come from somewhere. Like consumers are either paying for it or companies are paying for it. But so there needs to be an exchange of value, right? It's just like energy. You can't just create value out of nothing. So I'll put a pin in that because I know I've said a lot of stuff here. And excuse me if I get overly excited because this stuff is pretty exciting to me. It's I really am excited about this stuff. So put a pin in that for a second because this got me thinking about all kinds of things. And one of them was diversity in general. Obviously we're lacking in that in this room right now. There's not a single woman in here. But overall, there is a positive trend. There is a positive trend in diversity in general, in the workplace in general, and you can say in tech as well.
They're talking to camp right now, so we're diverse.
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. Yeah. So I was really pleased. I was really pleased when I joined Cisco that Cisco has a lot of really great programs for improving diversity within the company, but also externally as well. I'll put some links out there at the end of my talk that you could go check out. A couple of them are really good and they're open to the public, and I really encourage that everyone look at that. But I think even more alarming than the current state of diversity in tech and in general in the workplace is something that isn't necessarily a backbreaking issue right now, but that certainly will become one as these advancements that I discussed do accelerate. And that's a growing inequality. And typically when people talk about inequality, you think about financial inequality. That's how it's normally referred to. But really what I'm really referring to when I say inequality is a skills gap that is being created by these advancements in technology. And I'm definitely, done a bunch of tech startups. I'm definitely not standing here in front of you and somehow moralizing technology or trying to immoralize technology and saying that we need to necessarily slow down because of some implied negative consequence to advancements in technology. But this chart, I don't have the link on here, damn. I can get that out to everyone. But this chart is part of a broad study that was done to study the effects of computerization and automation on society. And so what this chart is showing is that, so on the left-hand side, you have, these are all white-collar jobs, by the way. These are all white-collar jobs that are being impacted by computerization, or that may be impacted by computerization. And on the left side of the chart, you have low skill, low pay jobs. And the right side of the chart, you have high skill, high pay jobs. And what you'll see is that there's no fucking jobs in the middle. We are seeing a massive erosion in what we consider to be the ability for someone to live a middle class lifestyle. Right? And that's not because people like to blame politicians and policy because of that, but it's not. It's just the jobs aren't there, like because the value is shifting here, and then the value that was being generated here is being just automated. It's just not being done by humans anymore. And so, is this good or bad? Like, I think that's probably a discussion for a beer after this talk, or not. And so, again, I'm not drawing conclusions from this alone. But the one thing that I decided for myself, and you guys can take or leave this and have your own opinion, but it's that as an innovator myself and as an entrepreneur, I feel that we have, at the very least, a moral imperative to just build systems that are mindful. Build systems, and when I say systems, not just software systems, but like as a whole, like when we build software platforms, we are imposing a way of working onto the world. And if we're successful, then a lot of people are going to adopt those principles that we're putting forward. And so we have a moral imperative to be mindful, I think. Okay, so that was my soapbox, and I'm going to like officially step off of it right now. And I'm going to get into kind of the meat of this talk, which is how does all this apply to my domain, which is collaboration? And so right here you have beautiful plug for our products. So this is Cisco Spark. It's badass. You should download it and try it. And basically it's an enterprise messaging app. You can think of it like Slack, for example. It has bots in it, all kinds of cool stuff. There are a lot of reasons why we think it's better than Slack. For example, it's end-to-end encrypted. So Cisco's not going to be snooping on your messages. Actually, we can't even snoop on your messages if we wanted to. But also it has beautiful HD video. It's compatible with all of our awesome hardware, and it's a great tool. And so my role at Cisco is I don't build these products. I look after the platform side of it, so the cloud infrastructure that powers all of these great products. And my job is to expose that platform to third-party developers that want to do cool things with it. So if you want to embed video into your app, or embed encrypted, super secure messaging into your app, then that's great. But another part of my job is a growing number of developers who don't want to build their own apps, but they want to participate in the value that's being created on these types of platforms, right? And a lot of that value is being created through, or being manifested through these chatbots, right? I'm sure if you had to have been living under a rock to not have interacted with a chatbot at all, right? It's intentionally black. Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. So I'm going to talk a little bit about chatbots. Some of the best practices that we've seen out there, and what the applications of AI and machine learning we feel have strong applicability in this domain. And then I'll give you some links to resources if you want to learn more after. So we've got plenty of time. And then, so before I dive in directly into that, you won't see this in any Cisco literature. But when my family asks me, like, what I do and what types of products my company builds, I sometimes struggle to talk about it, right? And I can use the analogy, oh, it's like Slack to you guys, and you probably know what I mean, but I can't say that to like my mom or my sister. But also even to just like my other kind of professional friends. And so, I've coped with that. I've come up with like these little ways of like, relating it to people, and maybe I say it's like kind of like Skype or whatever. But that got me thinking a lot also about what is really the core value of collaboration products? And what I kind of zeroed in on is that it's really two things. People pay us money, people pay Cisco or buy Cisco collaboration products for two reasons. They want their employees to share knowledge with each other, or share knowledge with their customers. So you do that, you share your screen, you talk about things, and you convey information, and then that information is kind of retained, so put quite simply. And at the end of that, you want to arrive at some sort of decision. So whether it's like you and a customer, you agree to like a sale, or internally you're sharing knowledge and you're like, oh wow, that's a great idea, we should do that. And then you make a decision. And ultimately, like when you buy WebEx or you buy our fancy telepresence systems or whatever, that's really what you're paying for at the end of the day. And so really the whole advent of chatbots is an effort to either do one of two things. One is assist humans in helping to arrive at better decisions or derive better decision making, or take a human out of the equation on one side of that, right? So it's a human absorbing knowledge from some automata, right? But still with the exact same goal, right? We want to perpetuate and spread knowledge, and we want to derive better decisions. And so what's a chatbot? Most of you guys probably know what they are, but basically they show up as regular people in your whatever chat app that you're using, but they're backed by a computer program instead. And so they normally have like a nickname, they'll have an avatar, and they, for all intents and purposes, look like another user on the platform. But when you interact with them, it's really just a computer program that's taking the text that you're typing, or in some cases, like we support video bots, it's taking your video stream and it can do interesting things with it as well. And what we found is that generally chatbots are classified into two main areas. You have ones that are what we call command and control. So they're just kind of passively sitting there just waiting for a command. And there are other ones that are more conversational in nature. Siri is a good example of command and control, right? Siri has no memory. If I ask Siri, what's the weather in Miami today? It's very happy to tell me. But if after that I say, hey Siri, what about Boston? It's like, what about Boston? It's a nice place, I guess. But I just asked you, what was the weather in Miami? Why can't you connect those two, right? And it's because Siri doesn't have a memory. I'll skip ahead a little bit. Oops, no, too much. Okay, sorry about that. So recent advancements in machine learning have made it possible to solve that problem. To actually build systems that are truly conversational in nature. And that was the main motivation for Cisco recently acquiring MindMeld. They're a San Francisco-based company, it's about 30 employees. Really great bunch of people. And they've spent the last 7 years solving that problem. They have built a natural language processing engine and a set of tooling around it, and a consistent methodology, more importantly, for building conversational AIs that have near human accuracy. And by near human, I'm saying 95% plus accuracy. Turns out that's a really, really hard problem to solve. And so we're super glad to have them on board. First and foremost, we plan on using their technologies to bake them into our own products so that you can walk up to a Cisco product and be like, hey Spark, help me schedule a meeting. I want to meet with Bob and Jane, in 2 Tuesdays from now. And it can walk you through the whole process because scheduling is a very difficult problem. It probably requires multiple interactions back and forth to actually solve that. So being in the business of meetings and collaboration, you can kind of extrapolate from there, like what are the types of domains that we'll be working on. And so we'll be leveraging the MindMeld team to do that. But what has me also pretty excited is the potential to open that up, allow developers to build skills on top of our AI. And again, this is not something new. You can take Alexa and teach it new skills today. It turns out that doing that in a secure way is actually pretty challenging. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. I snuck a couple slides in here, and since I have some time, I'll go through them as well. So I talked a little bit about chatbots. One of the interesting trends around chatbots in general is this concept of ChatOps. Quick show of hands, anyone heard of the term ChatOps? Yeah, 1, 2, okay, a couple of you. So this is great. So I love this definition, actually. It's from one of the engineers over at Atlassian. And it says, ChatOps is a collaboration modality that connects people, tools, process, and automation into a transparent workflow. And it connects the work needed, the work happening, and the work done in a persistent location, staffed by people, bots, and related tools. And I think it's a pretty insightful way of describing this movement. I'll talk about, I think it's better expressed through some examples. People are doing ChatOps. So basically ChatOps is you get a bunch of people into a chat room, and then you start adding bots and systems that can represent themselves via a text modality as well. And you're leveraging the fact that this is being done in a linear chat modality to find ways in which a workflow, some sort of business activity or engineering activity, can be expressed in a cleaner, more logical, and preferably more natural way, just as if you were all sitting together. But the nice thing about it is because you have these systems, these bots there, they have some nice attributes that you don't have in like an in-person conversation. I'll walk through some of those. But yeah, obvious examples of where this may be helpful is like a document approval flow, or if you're practicing agile at your companies and you do stand-ups regularly, like engineering stand-ups or whatever, having a bot that can enforce like, Jane, your turn, 2 minutes, Bob, because everyone talks over at the stand-ups. It should be a 15-minute stand-up, ends up being like a 45-minute design session. We have a stand-up bot that makes that not even possible. We literally mute your mic after your 2 minutes, and then we pin the video feed over to the next person whose turn it is to talk. And no one has to feel like an asshole because you told Bob to be quiet. It's just the bot. It's the bot did it. Sorry, man. But our meetings end on time. Lots of other examples here. And so why are ChatOps on the rise? What is so interesting about them that they've been growing so much? So there are about 4 main benefits to ChatOps, and I'll walk through them. First is these messaging tools, Cisco Spark, things like Slack and Microsoft Teams and a few other of them. They typically have strong identity. So if I see your avatar, and I kind of click on it and I kind of see, it's either backed by an email address or a username or whatever, I can be pretty sure that that's who I'm talking to. Some systems have stronger identity than others. So in Cisco Spark, we do a real-time key exchange. Each user has their own key and certificate. And so we have extremely high strong identity in Cisco Spark. So you can be pretty damn sure that who you think you're talking to is actually the person that you're talking to. And that becomes pretty important when a bot is sitting there in a chat room and it's receiving commands from someone to spin up another cluster, take that cluster down, move this customer from like site A to site B, or I, CEO of my company, approve this document. So identity is extremely important, and thankfully most of these messaging systems have pretty good identity. Second one, and this is something that I didn't realize until after interviewing a couple of our DevOps engineers recently, was an interesting challenge. So we've got some engineers in Beijing, and I don't know if you guys know this or not, but there's this thing called the Great Firewall of China that pretty much makes the internet suck in China. And so it's pretty restrictive. But worst of all, it's unpredictable. Things that worked yesterday don't work today. And so, yeah, well, yes, it's not helping their cause. But one of the interesting things that we found was our team in Beijing were having trouble connecting to the VPN. The Amazon, our VPN on Amazon. So we had a VPC and they couldn't connect. And all the tools they needed to do their job, these are DevOps engineers, all the tools they needed to do their jobs, they weren't accessible to them. They couldn't get on the VPN, so they couldn't get to all the web tools and all that we built. Well, guess what? And this is before we joined Cisco, as we were still Tropo. They can get to Slack just fine. So they couldn't get on the VPN to do their jobs, but they were sitting there bitching on Slack about how they couldn't get on the VPN to do their jobs. And here the team in the U.S. is like, fuck, man, I don't know what you want me to do. I need to go to bed. Like the whole reason we have a team in Beijing is so that we can follow the sun. And so we joined Cisco, and we were like, all right, well, because we were about to join Cisco, and we were like, all right, maybe we join Cisco, and this problem's going to go away. Nope, the internet still sucks in China, as it turns out. And but guess what? ChatOps to the rescue, right? And what we did was we built a lot of the tools that we had that were behind the VPN were pretty much just web apps. Like our DevOps team, they built a bunch of web apps, in Rails, and that's what they use to maintain the network, right? It's like, oh, I need to look up customer B, or a ticket comes in from support, and they're like, oh, wow, yeah, that cluster is shitty, or we're seeing some alarms or whatever. Let's move them off to this other cluster, or let's scale them out. And so, they had a bunch of humans that were looking at screens, making decisions about the operations of our company. And we said, man, this doesn't need to be a web page. Like we can just put this in chat, and then we can fix the Beijing problem and also like reduce one more tool that we had to like log into and remember a password for and all of that. And so we did that. And it had this dramatic impact on our productivity. Not so, obviously it solved the problem for the Beijing team, but the other thing that it gave us was accountability. Because, this is like a handful of like DevOps guys writing these web tools. You think they're actually like logging really nice audit logs for like everything, every button that you're clicking on this? No. Like some guy wrote it, some guy had like a Perl script and he was like, fuck, this Perl script sucks. And then he's like, oh, I'm gonna do a web app for it. So like he like stayed up all night and like built like a Rails app for it. And that was it. And like, you press the button or whatever. And they were logging some of the things that were going on, but it wasn't perfect. And one of the things that happens when you move into ChatOps, it's a chat. So when you say like, cluster bot, take this cluster out of routing, guess what? That's an actual message that's in like the chat tool, and then cluster bot says, yeah, sure, I'll do that for you, and it does it. So like if tomorrow all hell breaks loose, and like the next guy that's on pager duty wakes up and he's like, what the hell happened last night? All he has to do is just scroll up and be like, oh, Ben, you told the bot to do this and whatever. And so, all this work that was put into like, writing these audit records and audit logs, and you have to sift through logs or whatever, now just becomes a natural language problem. And that brings me to the last one, which I just touched on as well, which is context, right? So what happened? Oh, Bob took the cluster out of routing at 11:05. Why did he do it? Well, just scroll up a little more, and there's a good chance that you're going to see, Ben or Bob like complaining about something, and be like, oh, I just got paged, like customer blah 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 blah, and then you see the command to the bot, right? So anyways, ChatOps is an interesting thing because I think it was meant to solve one problem, ended up solving many, many more. That's great, and so chatbots are cool, and so is ChatOps. But the reality is, when you go and you survey the market, just about every bot that's out there is complete garbage. Like they just don't work really well. They get stuck, and that's just because I think as an industry, we just haven't arrived at a set of usability UX patterns that are just well established on the web. Right, and on the web you have frameworks like Twitter Bootstrap and like all these like jQuery and whatever, and now a new generation of tools like Angular and React that make doing the right thing also the easy thing to do, and we just haven't done that in the bot world yet. And so that's one of the things that we're doing, investing in very much at Cisco. Part of that was the recent acquisition that we made of MindMeld, but also we're working with companies like API.ai, Gupshup, StampPlay, and a number of others to do a couple things. One is, if we want to get all of the benefits that I was talking about just a second ago, one thing that you want to do is you want to build bots that are conversational in nature. And obviously one of the two main challenges to doing that are understanding what the user is asking you to do, so that's natural language processing, and then acting on that in a way that is consistent but also auditable and expressive. And so with the MindMeld technology and the team that we brought on board, we're well on our way to solving the first problem. And what you'll see from us are a set of tools and frameworks that aren't just compatible with our own products, but hopefully many other chat tools as well, for making it possible to build truly conversational AIs that, at the very least, understand the semantic meaning of what the user is looking to be done. And then we plan on publishing a set of guidelines, best practices for how to have those bots actually act on that information in a way that's expressive. I'll close on a couple thoughts. One is, I think more important than building great bots or even all of the problems that these solve, going back to the kind of the inequality rant that I was on earlier. I think even more important than all of this is as we're building systems, and I think it's more acute in my domain where we're working with conversational AIs that have an end user impact, we want to make sure that whenever possible, we're building systems that, when possible, extend the capabilities of human users rather than trying to replace them. Like it would be really easy to just build a bot. So there's two types of bot that you can build, right? One is like you're in a chat room with 5 people and you add a 6th person now, which is a bot, and he's an equal member to the 6, and he's just kind of working alongside you, and maybe he does some things that are faster or with higher accuracy, or you can introduce that bot as to be kind of a helper. And some of it is just UX. It's just how the bot presents itself, how it introduces itself when it comes into the room, but also in the types of dialogues and the types of conversations that you build into the bot. It's important, we found, that in order to gain traction for your bot, for it to be perceived as a helper and not as a replacement. And we're not just seeing that with business users, but really across the board. So quick wrap up. We talked a little bit about, we've talked a lot of things in about 45 minutes. So we talked about diversity and how it's getting better and how we really need to make a better effort at it. Cisco has a great program, or I think we started it, but now there's a bunch of companies involved. You can go and visit it. It's called multiplydiversity.com, and it's all about bringing a diverse level of thinking into the enterprise, not just gender diversity, but cultural diversity as well. And it's a really cool site. Basically, it doesn't cost any money. They're not asking for donations or anything, but pretty much what it is you take a pledge to say that over the next year, you're going to pick one person that you think is worthy of your mentorship or of your accolades, and that you're going to help that person be noticed and to move one level up in their life. And whatever that level means to you, it doesn't have to be like a level at your company or a different pay band or whatever, but you're just going to help them level up in life over the course of 12 months. And I think if each one of us, and a lot of us that have had the privilege of being successful, can just like pick one person that we feel it is worthy and is trying hard and deserves to be recognized for that, and just kind of help them do that, we'll have, it's not just going to make the world a better place, but we're going to see better products come out of it, because diversity is just good for software in general. Also, just be mindful of that skills gap that we talked about earlier. And we're doing all of this not out of altruistic means. I really do believe that it's good business to do all of this stuff, right? If we think of, so going back to the chasm that we looked at earlier, right? Where is it? Right. If we go back to this, if you just, as an entrepreneur or even as someone building products for your company, spend some time thinking about, like, these are all white collar jobs that are being kind of like displaced by automation and computerization. Think about, this is going to take time. This is going to take, 10, 15 years, I think, is by the best estimate if you go and you read this report, right? So this isn't the case now, but it will be in 15 years. So there's actually good business to be done in helping these displaced users, which are currently using software systems, in making a transition. And so if you can do that well, and if you can help the companies that these employees work for today help make that transition so that they can introduce automation without being seen as like evil, corporate overlord that's like automating their jobs. If you can build systems that are empathetic and help people make that transition, you'll make a shitload of money, because big companies don't want to be perceived as being, the guys that have to lay off 10,000 people. If you can build software that finds new roles for those 10,000 people within the organization, then that's awesome. And you can make a lot of money doing it as well. So I think we are pretty much done. I have nothing to do with this book, by the way, because I get asked sometimes, they're like, but what's in it for you? I loved it so much. It changed my worldview in a very profound way. And so I highly recommend that you guys get it on Kindle or whatever. It's really, really good and a pretty quick read. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
You mentioned technology is going to accelerate, and then at some point we may miss when we were sleeping,
Yeah.
a major medical development, breakthrough, whatever, or anything else. How can we implement it if we missed it?
How can we what?
Implement it if we missed it.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm a doctor. Last night, I was removing somebody's leg. Tomorrow, I do something else. Okay.
Yeah.
But if I don't know that I'm doing something else.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought up medicine, right? Because it's I think this is going to be one of the first areas to be impacted by this. I mean, think about it today, right? I mean, there's think about the amount of time that the average surgeon has to spend constantly learning new techniques. They read trade journals, they go to conferences. Why? It's not just the network with their fellow surgeons, right? Hopefully they're spending that time learning, constantly learning new techniques, right? But it's simply impossible today already without this exponential growth in AI and machine learning applied to diagnostics and medical techniques. It's a great question. I'm not in the medical field, but I imagine that the field of diagnostics will eventually be almost fully automated. So you'll walk into an evaluation center and it'll be an AI that diagnoses you, and then out comes that diagnostic to a human surgeon that says, hey, they've been diagnosed with this, and here is the suggested treatment. Maybe we live in a world 20 years from now when like eight times out of 10, the doctor's never even heard of that technique. But now they can go train up on it. They know that between now and the surgery, which is scheduled for a week from now or whatever, they just have to go learn that technique. And we have to create systems that help doctors quickly learn these techniques, get quickly certified, because they probably have never heard of them before.
Helping them decide when, even
Right.
the new treatment.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So they have to be able to integrate those treatment, doctors or
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, this is a tough problem, but.
And the other thing I was wondering, so you are saying that jobs are going to disappear.
Yeah, 47% there is 47% of white-collar jobs in the U.S.
But maybe another way to think about it is that the definition of work is going to change.
Yeah, I'm an optimist, so I love. Yeah, that sounds good to me. But I don't know what that means.
That's a different issue.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of crazy ideas being thrown around now. Universal income and a bunch of interesting ideas. Yeah, interesting ideas being thrown around. I mean, what do you do? What do you do when and it all goes back to value creation, right? So if these jobs aren't evaporating because there is a lack of production required. Like, we're not in an austerity period right now, but so why are those jobs being lost? And it's because they're being automated, and so these machines are creating value where humans were before. And I guess the question that a lot of people are asking themselves, and I'm not even going to attempt to have a position on this, but the question at least is, if the amount of value being created stays the same, or hopefully even goes up, with less human effort, then shouldn't we just all benefit from that? Like, if the bots are doing all the work now, then like, isn't this when we just like be like, woo, yeah, let's all go, let's do a 4-day work week or a 3-day work week or whatever, and let's all go and enjoy our lives, right? We get into that. It takes us into all kinds of social issues that are just tough conversations to have, right? And in this political climate, I think a lot of us are just focused on getting through the day, than having these tough conversations. But hopefully, in about 3.5 years, we can actually start having a reasonable conversation about what we do with this stuff. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
This is an ethical question. So at some point, the bots are going to be so good that they will pass the Turing test.
Yeah.
So how do you know you're talking to a human versus a bot?
Yeah, good question. I mean, why does it matter? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it is a good. Yeah, could be a bad guy, but yeah, there's a lot of bad real guys out there too. But yeah, that's fascinating question. I think quick thought on that is I think identity just becomes super important at that point, and the internet. The internet was created, originally as like a DARPA initiative, so we had reasonable identity then. But then somehow, like, we started really valuing anonymity on the internet, and a lot of the big ideas that were there at the founding of the internet kind of went away when we started embracing this need for anonymity on the internet. And so we had an opportunity 15, 20 years ago to put in place strong identity on the web. We chose not to. We explicitly chose not to because we wanted to be anonymous. Now, no one's really anonymous on the web. So maybe it is time now to rethink that. And so, if you're interacting with some other entity on the web, you check its cert or whatever, and it's just like, oh, that's a bot, and that's that, right? I don't know. I know there's a lot of work that's happening in Firefox on some experimental branches that are looking at exactly that. They're using a variety of verification techniques, including biometrics and computer vision, to certify not just that someone's physically at the computer, but that it's actually you browsing.
I was wondering, like when you were talking about.
Oh, sorry, just one back there, and then I'll come back to you. Yeah.
So this productivity explosion that you're anticipating, it seems like, in my opinion, that it's being constrained by the fluidity of information between various groups. So you're describing collaboration in the context of a group, but are you seeing any progress in terms of helping either individuals or groups identify or be proactively be made aware of activities, information, people, expertise, say maybe within their enterprise? In my context, actually consulting with Cisco, there's often another group doing what you're doing, someone else in the context of Cisco, and you're building up this whole team, you're getting justification to do so, and suddenly you realize that already happened. Is anybody trying to solve that problem whereby the AI is spidering activity within the organization?
Yeah, IBM. Is there any IBM people here? Or no. IBM's doing some fascinating stuff here. I think they call it expert something. I'll find it and I'll send that out to the group or something. I'll put it on the Eventbrite or whatever. But yeah, no, IBM has a project exactly that. It's built on top of Watson, and basically it ingests a corpus of information from a variety of different sources, and it'll just help you find an expert within your organization on a particular topic without them necessarily listing it like on their intranet profile or whatever. And so it uses who's creating PowerPoints with on this topic, like who's talking about that stuff on the company chat boards, or who's posting about who is authoring wiki pages about this stuff or writing emails about it. Obviously, you get into some pretty sticky privacy issues when you talk about that. And one of the challenges we have at Cisco is because we've made the decision to end-to-end encrypt all the data flowing through our systems, we as Cisco actually don't have really a lot of insight into what you're talking about, but we do understand the edges of like the connections that are being made, who's talking to who, but we just don't know about what. And so one of the techniques that we're looking to apply without covering too much secret sauce is clever use of containerization so that we can push compute units in almost real time to our customers' edge private data centers, right? And so if we feel that there's an interesting event that needs data that needs crunched, while we don't have the encryption keys to do it, we can push containers out to the edge of our customers' networks where we do have the encryption keys. We can perform that computation, derive an insight, and then push that insight out and then spin down the compute resources, right? So I think we have time for, we have a couple more. Yeah.
Can I? So chatbots, I'm kind of hearing about them for quite a time. And you mentioned this company that was working for 7 years in the area, right? And I hear no kind of any dramatic developments and no like killer application, at least in the enterprise space. So it almost sounds like a revolution that didn't happen, or is not going to happen. So
Yeah.
At work, people are using Slack, and the most frequent application they're using is Giphy, which is kind of lame, right?
Yeah.
So what's your take on that? Is it going to happen? And is killer
Yeah, good. Yeah, good question. I get asked that a lot, actually, in a variety of different ways. But so certainly, chatbots have not lived up to the hype. If you're judging the hype, if you live in this 7x7, bubble that we live in, then it certainly hasn't lived up to the hype. The hype was never that big to begin with outside of this bubble, right? And so outside of the VC sphere and the technosphere here in the Bay Area, like you go to, you look at people that are using these chat tools in other parts of the world, and they, you ask them, are you getting value from like your ServiceNow bot or your Jira bot or whatever? And they're like, yeah, it's great. It saves me 20 minutes a day. So it's not earth-shattering. And so if we can find ways, and that's what we're trying to do by applying better techniques around conversational AI, being able to take previous interactions and then predict users' behavior and also what questions they're going to ask next, and then suggest what the next appropriate answer would be. Our goal is very humble. It's just if we can turn those 20 minutes that people are saving today to an hour, and we can go to our customers and say, hey, we build collaboration products. We're already saving your employees, this many hours a week by not having them to get in their car and travel or whatever. Now they can have video calls anywhere in the world. And in addition to that, we're saving them an hour a day by employing this conversational AI. That's just massive amounts of value, right? An hour a day, that's over 10% a productivity gain, right? And so I don't know that there necessarily will be a killer app. Maybe there will be, maybe there won't. But it's a gradual improvement in productivity, and that users like. I mean, generally they like talking to these things. They find it a refreshing break from their day. It doesn't talk back to them. They don't have to negotiate it with them. They just kind of do what they're told, and it's like having a third arm or another appendage, right?
You can turn it off.
And you can turn it off at will, right? You don't have to use them, yeah. Yep. You had one more.
Yeah. So you mentioned all the tools like Slack, video conferencing, and all that kind of stuff. But then they're like on the flip side of that argument that on one hand it makes people more connected and more disconnected. And so while there was a gentleman before here talking about he has a team here, or some person here, whatever. There is which make it great now, but there is also the other part of it is that maybe like sometimes if they were more often together, they would be more creative.
Totally. Yeah.
So I think that there is like the human aspect in all that.
Absolutely.
Needs to be balanced.
Yeah. No, I'm totally with you. I personally. And I can't say this too loudly, although I have a camera in my face. But no, I think absolutely people are more productive when they're together in person. If I were to do another startup, I would be hard pressed to allow remote working policy, at least for until we've scaled to a certain size, because I think it's just really important for people to create those in-person bonds. But it's just not practical, right? I mean, I'm working on a VR app right now at Cisco, a virtual reality app, and the team I have to work with that had the cycles to work on my project, they're in Shenzhen, and it's just like I can go. I've got a 2-year-old. I can't just pick up and spend a few weeks in Shenzhen, right? I mean, I could, but and so these tools make it are the next best thing to being in person. But I'll tell you what, I think conversational AI isn't really limited to long distances. That's what's so great about it. I mean, we just released a product earlier this year called the Spark board. It's basically like a 70-inch tablet that you stick on the wall. And it's shared collaboration space. You can go up and draw on it and whiteboard and stuff like that. It also does video, and but you can project your laptop to it. So it's a presentation device, and it's a pretty cool thing. And so with all this, with the MindMeld acquisition and all this investment that we're making in AI, we also want to make it so that the device itself is like an in-person helper, right? It's an entity, and so you can walk up to it. Someone comes up with a really great idea, and you can just say, "Hey, Spark, take this action item," or "Hey, remind me tomorrow that Bob needs to get me this, that, or whatever." Again, this isn't earth-shattering stuff. I can do that with my Google Home today, but what the difference is to do it contextually as you're doing work done, there is tremendous amount of value in that connection. Like if I, literally as I'm drawing a diagram and you're like, oh, that's it, like that's the thing that we've been missing, if in that right moment, in that context, like extemporaneously, yeah, okay. Yeah, contemporaneously, thank you. And just make that connection right away. There's tremendous amount of value there, and yeah, it's those little things that we're looking to make better. Cool. Well, I think we're out of time, and it's beer time. I don't know if you wanted to say a few words, but thank you so much for your time, and talk to you guys later.